On Christmas morning, my three sons sat me down at my own dining table and told me I had 24 hours to sign over my house, my retirement fund, and every account with my name on it. My youngest handed me the pen like he was doing me a favor. I took it. I signed every page without a single tear. And then I walked out into the snow wearing the same dress I'd worn to their father's funeral 5 years ago. 11 days later, federal agents showed up at all three of their front doors before sunrise. They thought they'd buried me. They had no idea I'd been digging their graves for weeks. The heating vent in my upstairs hallway has always carried sound from the kitchen below. My husband Gerald designed the house that way by accident when he built the addition 30 years ago, and I never bothered fixing it because I liked hearing the sounds of my family moving through the rooms beneath me. Coffee brewing, chairs scraping, my boys arguing about football scores on Sunday mornings. Those sounds were the texture of my life. 3 weeks before Christmas, those same vents carried a different kind of conversation. I need you both to understand that this has to happen on Christmas Day. My oldest son Daniel's voice was calm and measured, the way it always was when he was managing a situation. He ran a real estate development company, or at least that's what he told everyone. She won't suspect anything because she'll be emotional about Dad. It's the 5th anniversary of his death. She'll be sentimental, distracted. We use that. My middle son Marcus spoke next. And you're sure the documents are airtight? Because if she gets a lawyer involved before she signs, this falls apart. She won't get a lawyer. Daniel again. Mom trusts us completely. That's the whole point. We tell her it's an estate planning update, consolidating assets for tax purposes. She'll sign because we're her sons, and she believes we'd never hurt her. My youngest, Ryan, was quieter. His voice barely reached me through the vent. What about the house? She loves this house. Dad built it for her. Dad built it with money from the medical practice. Daniel's tone sharpened. The practice that funded everything. The house is worth $1.8 million, and we need that equity now. The crypto fund collapsed, Ryan. All of it. Marcus took out a second mortgage on his condo using Mom's credit line. I leveraged the development company. We're looking at combined losses north of $3 million. And the margin calls hit January 15th. If we don't liquidate Mom's assets before then, we all go under. Publicly. Spectacularly. I pressed my hand flat against the hallway wall, feeling the vibration of their voices through my fingertips. My three sons, the boys I had nursed through fevers and driven to baseball practice and put through college by working double shifts at the hospital after their father died, were sitting in my kitchen planning to take everything I had. Ryan asked the question I was thinking. What happens to Mom after? She'll be fine. Daniel's dismissal was swift. She can stay with Aunt Linda for a while. She's 62, not helpless. Social Security kicks in eventually. The point is we need this done before anyone realizes how deep the hole is. If creditors find out we're leveraged against her assets without her knowledge, it's not bankruptcy. It's fraud. I crawled backward from the vent on my hands and knees, silent on the carpet Gerald had installed the year before he died. My chest felt like someone had reached inside and squeezed. Not because my sons were capable of this. Somewhere beneath the shock, I think I'd known for months that something was wrong. The sudden interest in my financial documents. Marcus asking to be added to my bank accounts for emergencies. Daniel insisting I update my power of attorney with his name. The pieces had been falling into place, and I had been too trusting to see the picture they formed. I sat on my bedroom floor for an hour, watching the winter light shift across the ceiling. Then I stood up, washed my face, and went downstairs to make dinner for my sons who were already gone. The kitchen smelled like the coffee they'd brewed while planning my financial destruction. I poured it down the sink and started fresh. That night, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Helen Nakamura, my college roommate who had spent 30 years as a forensic accountant specializing in elder financial abuse. We hadn't spoken in months, but she answered on the first ring. Eleanor, are you all right? It's almost midnight. I need your help, Helen. My boys are in trouble and they're planning to make it my problem. Her silence lasted exactly 2 seconds. I'll be there tomorrow morning. Don't sign anything. Don't confront them. And for God's sake, don't cry where they can hear you. The second call went to Patricia Okafor, an attorney who had handled Gerald's estate 5 years ago. She knew my assets better than I did because she'd helped me protect them after his death. Gerald had been meticulous about financial planning, almost paranoid about it, and Patricia had structured everything according to his wishes. "Patricia, this is Eleanor Whitfield. I need to meet with you urgently about my estate documents." Her response was immediate and professional. "My office, 7:30 tomorrow. Bring everything." The third call was the hardest. I dialed my sister Linda's number, then hung up before it connected. Linda would tell me to forgive them. She'd remind me they were my children, my blood. She'd say Gerald would have wanted me to help them. Gerald would have wanted me to protect what he built. And that's exactly what I intended to do. Helen arrived at 9 the next morning, carrying 2 laptops and a box of financial analysis software that she set up on my dining table with military precision. By noon, she had mapped the full scope of the disaster. "It's worse than what you overheard," she said, turning her laptop toward me. "Daniel's development company has been insolvent for 8 months. He's been using your home equity line to fund projects that don't exist. Fake invoices, phantom subcontractors, all routed through a series of shell companies that trace back to a cryptocurrency trading platform." She pulled up another screen. "Marcus is deeper in. He forged your signature on 3 separate loan applications, using this house as collateral. Total exposure is $1.4 million. The loans were approved because the applications included falsified income statements with your name and social security number." "And Ryan?" Helen's expression softened slightly. "Ryan's involvement is more passive, but he knew. His name appears on wire transfers from Marcus's accounts to the crypto platform. Small amounts, 5,000 here, 8,000 there, but consistent over 18 months. My hands were steady as I processed this. Gerald had died of pancreatic cancer when the boys were 28, 25 and 22. He'd left me the house, his pension, his life insurance and a medical practice that I'd sold for fair market value. I'd used that money to pay off every debt, fund college for Marcus and Ryan and invest conservatively. My net worth, built on decades of nursing shifts and Gerald's surgical practice, totaled just over $3 million. My sons had apparently decided that was theirs to gamble with. Patricia Okafor confirmed what I'd suspected during our meeting that afternoon. The documents Daniel planned to present on Christmas were sophisticated but flawed. He'd structured them as voluntary asset transfers disguised as estate planning updates, but he'd made a critical error. "Your husband's trust was irrevocable," Patricia explained, spreading the original documents across her conference table. "Gerald specifically designed it so that the house, the pension, and the investment accounts cannot be transferred without approval from me as the trustee and a sitting judge. Your sons apparently didn't know this because they never read the trust documents. They assumed everything was held in your name alone. So even if I sign their papers, the transfers don't actually work?" "Correct. The signatures would be meaningless. But the attempt itself, combined with the forged loan applications and fraudulent use of your identity, constitutes multiple federal offenses." She paused, meeting my eyes over her reading glasses. "Eleanor, what do you want to do? I want to know how deep this goes before I decide." Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the oblivious mother with an acting ability I didn't know I possessed. I baked Christmas cookies with Marcus's wife, Karen, who kept watching me with an expression I now recognized as guilt. She knew. I complimented Daniel's new watch at Sunday dinner, a $40,000 piece he'd bought while claiming his business was thriving. I helped Ryan pick out a gift for his girlfriend, driving him to 3 stores while he sat in my passenger seat texting frantically, probably coordinating the very plan that would leave me homeless. Meanwhile, Helen was building a case file that grew thicker every day. She discovered that Daniel had been filing false tax returns for 3 years, claiming business expenses for properties that didn't exist. Marcus's loan applications contained fabricated employment records and inflated asset statements. Most disturbing, she found evidence that all 3 had been withdrawing from a joint account they'd opened using my social security number without my knowledge, funneling the money into increasingly desperate cryptocurrency positions. The total fraud exceeded $2.7 million. Carlos Medina, Gerald's former practice manager who now handled my personal finances, called me the week before Christmas with the final piece. "Mrs. Whitfield, someone accessed your retirement account online and attempted to initiate a transfer of $480,000 to an offshore exchange. The transfer was flagged and blocked by the custodian's fraud department. The IP address traces back to Daniel's office." I thanked Carlos and added his report to the file. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright. I dressed carefully, choosing the black sheath dress I'd worn to Gerald's funeral. Not because I was mourning, though perhaps I was, but because it felt like armor. My mother's pearl earrings. Gerald's favorite perfume. Flat shoes, because I planned to walk out with dignity, not stumble. The boys arrived together at 10, which should have been my first clue that this was coordinated. They never arrived together. Daniel's wife stayed in the car. Marcus came alone, Karen conspicuously absent. Ryan brought his girlfriend, who immediately busied herself in the kitchen with an urgency that suggested she'd been assigned the task of staying out of the way. The living room had been decorated the night before by Ryan, who'd insisted on coming over early to set up. I noticed now that he'd moved the furniture subtly, creating an open space around the coffee table where a manila folder sat next to the gift I'd wrapped for each of them. Daniel spoke first, standing by the fireplace with his hands behind his back. The same posture Gerald used when delivering difficult diagnoses. "Mom, before we open gifts, we need to discuss something important. Dad's been gone 5 years now, and we think it's time to update the estate planning. Consolidate everything, make it more efficient. More tax-friendly," Marcus added, sitting on the couch with his phone angled toward me. The recorder was probably running. Ryan hovered near the door. His role was apparently to block the exit while looking casual about it. Daniel opened the folder and spread documents across the coffee table with the confidence of a man who had rehearsed this moment. "These are straightforward. Transfer of the house into a family trust that we'll manage jointly. Consolidation of the retirement accounts into a single fund. Authorization for us to act on your behalf for all financial decisions going forward." I picked up the first document and pretended to read it, though I'd already seen identical copies that Patricia had obtained through the county clerk's preliminary filings. The paperwork was dense, designed to overwhelm. Buried in subsection after subsection were clauses that would strip me of every asset and every legal right to recover them. "You want me to sign all of these?" My voice was steady, almost pleasant. The voice of a woman who had spent 40 years as a surgical nurse, remaining calm while everything around her bled. "It's for the best, Mom." Daniel's smile was Gerald's smile, and seeing it used this way felt like watching someone desecrate a grave. "We'll handle everything. You won't have to worry about finances anymore." Marcus leaned forward. "Think of it as our Christmas gift to you. Freedom from responsibility." Ryan said nothing. He stared at the floor. I picked up the pen Daniel had placed beside the folder. A Mont Blanc. Gerald's. Actually, taken from his desk after the funeral. I'd wondered where it had gone. My signature appeared on the first page. Then the second. Then every yellow-tabbed line across 37 pages of documents that would have destroyed me if they'd been worth the paper they were printed on. The room exhaled when I set down the pen. Daniel's shoulders dropped. Marcus stopped his recording and slipped his phone into his pocket. Ryan finally looked up, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't triumph. It was relief that it was over. "Thank you, Mom." Daniel gathered the papers with barely concealed eagerness. "This really is the smartest move for everyone." I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked to the hall closet where my coat hung next to Gerald's old parka that I'd never been able to donate. I put on my coat, picked up my purse, and turned to face the 3 men I had raised. "Your father would be ashamed of you." Not angry. Ashamed. There's a difference, and you're all old enough to understand it. I closed the door behind me before any of them could respond. The cold hit my face like a slap, but I welcomed it. My Honda started on the second try, and I drove away from the house Gerald built, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared behind the bare winter trees. Before we continue, I want to thank you for watching. If you believe that family should never betray family, please consider subscribing. It's free and it helps others find these stories. Now, let me tell you what happened next. The hotel room I'd booked 2 weeks earlier was ready and waiting. Clean, impersonal, and paid for in cash under my maiden name. Helen had prepared everything. A new phone with a new number. A laptop with encrypted access to every document she'd compiled. A schedule of meetings that would begin the next morning and end with my sons facing consequences they'd never imagined possible. But first, I sat on the hotel bed and allowed myself exactly 30 minutes to grieve. Not for the money or the house. For the boys they used to be. For Daniel at age 6, bringing me dandelions from the backyard. For Marcus at 12, reading to me from his homework because he wanted me to hear how well he could pronounce the big words. For Ryan, the baby who had crawled into my bed every night for a year after Gerald's diagnosis, pressing his face against my shoulder while I pretended not to cry. Those boys were gone. Maybe they'd never existed the way I remembered them. Maybe I'd been performing motherhood the same way they just performed love. Either way, the 30 minutes ended, and I dried my face and opened my laptop. Carlos Medina's documentation arrived first. Detailed records of every unauthorized access to my accounts, complete with IP addresses, timestamps, and transaction amounts. Helen's financial analysis followed, a 200-page report mapping the fraud from inception to execution. Patricia Okafor sent a legal brief confirming that every document I'd signed was unenforceable due to the irrevocable trust Gerald had established. She'd also prepared criminal referral packages for the FBI, the IRS, and the State Attorney General's office. For 7 days, I worked in that hotel room while my phone accumulated messages I didn't answer. Daniels progressed from annoyed to concerned to suspicious. Why won't you answer? This isn't like you. Marcus tried a different approach, sending photos of his daughter, my granddaughter Lily, at her preschool Christmas concert. Miss you. Grandma was the caption. The manipulation was so transparent it made my chest ache, not because it worked, but because he thought it would. Ryan's messages were different. Short, fragmented, riddled with typos that suggested shaking hands. Mom, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't help. I'm sorry. On January 2nd, Helen and I met with FBI Special Agent Diana Torres, who had spent 10 years investigating cryptocurrency fraud. Her office was clean and organized, and she listened without interruption for 45 minutes while Helen walked her through the evidence. When Helen finished, Agent Torres turned to me. Mrs. Whitfield, your sons are looking at wire fraud, identity theft, tax evasion, and bank fraud. Federal charges. The cryptocurrency angle adds money laundering to the list. Are you prepared for what that means? I've been preparing for 3 weeks. She nodded. We'll need 72 hours to coordinate with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Can you maintain no contact until then? I'd maintained no contact for 7 days already. 3 more felt like nothing. The morning of January 5th began with the kind of cold that makes your bones feel hollow. I was in my hotel room eating breakfast when Helen called. It's happening now. Turn on the local news. Channel 8's morning anchor was already mid-sentence when I found the station. Federal agents executing multiple arrest warrants this morning in connection with a wide-ranging financial fraud investigation. The screen split into 3 feeds. The first showed Daniel being led from his office building in handcuffs, his $40,000 watch catching the winter sunlight. His wife stood in the parking lot, screaming at agents who ignored her with practiced indifference. Daniel's face was the color of old concrete. The second feed showed Marcus's condo, where agents carried boxes through the front door. Marcus himself sat on the front steps in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hands cuffed behind his back. A neighbor walked a dog past him without slowing down. Ryan surrendered himself at the federal building downtown. Agent Torres told me later that he'd arrived 20 minutes before the agents came for him, carrying a handwritten statement. He was the only one who didn't require persuasion. My phone exploded with 41 calls before noon. I answered none of them but saved every voicemail. Daniel's first message was pure outrage. Mother, I don't know what you've done, but you've made a catastrophic mistake. These charges are baseless. My attorneys will have this dismissed by Friday. You need to call me immediately and tell them this is a misunderstanding. His second message, 3 hours later, was different. The attorneys can't get the accounts unfrozen. Patricia Okafor says the trust was irrevocable. Did you know that? Did you know the whole time that the papers were worthless? His voice cracked. Why did you sign them if you knew? Marcus didn't call until evening. His single voicemail was 20 seconds of silence followed by 5 words. How did you find out? Ryan didn't call at all. He sent one text. I deserve this. Over the following weeks, the investigation expanded in ways I hadn't anticipated. Daniel's shell companies led agents to a network of fraudulent real estate developments involving 3 other investors, all of whom had been deceived about where their money was going. Marcus's forged loan applications triggered a banking fraud investigation that uncovered similar schemes he'd run for other clients. The cryptocurrency platform they'd used was already under federal scrutiny, and my son's transactions provided the evidence prosecutors needed to shut it down entirely. Karen, Marcus's wife, came to see me at the hotel. She stood in the doorway looking 10 years older than the last time I'd seen her, Lily clinging to her leg. "I knew," she said. "Not everything, but enough. I should have told you. I was afraid he'd take Lily." I invited her in and made coffee while Lily drew pictures on hotel stationery. Karen told me about the nights Marcus came home smelling like whiskey and desperation, the credit cards that stopped working, the collection calls she intercepted. She told me about the morning he'd practiced the Christmas speech in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tone until it sounded sufficiently concerned and loving. "I have nowhere to go, Eleanor. His name is on everything. The condo, the cars, the accounts. It's all frozen." I called Patricia Okafor that afternoon. By Friday, Karen had a temporary apartment, access to a protected bank account, and a family law attorney who specialized in separating innocent spouses from their husbands' criminal liabilities. Lily's preschool tuition was covered through the spring. The Whitfield house stood exactly as I'd left it on Christmas morning. Gerald's tools still organized in the garage. My garden dormant beneath the January snow. The kitchen where my sons had planned my ruin still smelled like the cinnamon candles I'd lit for the holidays. Patricia confirmed that the property had never been at risk because the trust Gerald established protected it completely. My husband, even in death, had somehow shielded me from the people I'd trusted most. Helen helped me change every lock, every password, every account number. Carlos restructured my finances with layers of protection that would make future manipulation impossible. I didn't move back into the house immediately. Instead, I spent a month at the hotel, letting the silence teach me things about myself that 40 years of caretaking had buried. I liked eating dinner at 9 instead of 6. I liked reading in bed until 2 in the morning without worrying about waking anyone. I liked choosing what to watch, what to cook, where to walk, without filtering every decision through someone else's preferences. The letters started arriving in February. Daniel's came on legal stationery, dictated to his public defender because his personal attorneys had dropped him when the retainer ran out. His tone had shifted from commanding to transactional, listing specific things he needed. Money for commissary. A character reference for his bail hearing. Someone to manage his company's dissolution because there was no one left who would do it. Marcus wrote by hand, his penmanship deteriorating across 4 pages. The detention center gave him limited paper, and he used every inch. He wrote about Lily. About Karen leaving, about the moment the cell door closed and he understood for the first time that consequences were real things that happened to real people, not abstract concepts that happened to clients he defended in court. Ryan's letter was one sentence. "You were the only good thing in my life, and I broke it." I kept all 3 letters in a folder labeled Christmas gifts. Not as trophies. As reminders. 6 months after Christmas morning, I stood in the backyard Gerald had designed, watching the garden I'd planted come back to life. The roses were budding early this year, defiant little promises of color pushing through soil that had frozen solid just weeks ago. My phone sat on the patio table, quiet now. The 41 desperate calls had long since faded into the permanent record of a federal investigation. Daniel received 4 years. Marcus got 3. Ryan, who had cooperated fully and testified against the cryptocurrency platform, received 18 months at a minimum security facility and a chance at a second life. Karen brought Lily to visit every Sunday. We baked cookies together, the 3 of us, in the kitchen where my sons had once plotted my destruction. Lily called me grandma and didn't understand why her father lived somewhere she couldn't visit, but she understood that grandma's house was safe, and that the cookies were always warm, and that some things don't break even when everything around them does. Patricia Okafor called that afternoon to confirm the final details of the foundation I was establishing. The Gerald Whitfield Fund for Elder Financial Protection would launch in September, providing legal resources and forensic accounting services for seniors whose family members had exploited their trust. Helen Nakamura would serve as board treasurer. Carlos Medina would manage operations. "Any second thoughts?" Patricia asked. "Not one." Through the kitchen window, I watched Lily chase a butterfly across the lawn Gerald had seeded 30 years ago. The grass had survived everything, drought and flood and winters that should have killed it. Some things are like that. Some things just keep growing. The last voicemail from Daniel arrived on a Tuesday, 6 months and 4 days after Christmas. His voice was flat, emptied of arrogance and anger and everything else that had made him sound like a man in control. "Mom, they're transferring me to a facility in Ohio. I won't be able to call for a while. I know you won't answer, and I know I deserve that. But I need you to know that I replay that Christmas morning every single day. Not the signing. The moment you said Dad would be ashamed, that's the part that won't stop playing. I listened to it once. Then I deleted it, set my phone on the counter, and went outside to help Lily water the roses. The sun was warm on my face, and the garden smelled like Gerald's favorite season, and somewhere in a federal facility in Ohio, my oldest son was finally learning what it costs to betray the person who gave you everything. 41 missed calls. 3 arrest warrants. 1 irrevocable trust that a dead man built because he knew, somehow he knew, that love alone wouldn't be enough to protect me. Gerald always was the smartest person in any room. Even the rooms he'd never see. If this story had you holding your breath, hit that like button right now. My favorite moment was when Eleanor signed every document with complete calm, knowing the trust made them worthless. What moment hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments below. And don't miss more stories like this. Subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss an upload.